Hello, I'm Marcus Boston. Quick video today, and we're going to talk about HIE, but in the context of developmental milestones. Now, if you've had an opportunity to watch some of my other videos or go to my website, you know that we assist families with HIE. In other words, children who have suffered brain injuries at birth. That's what we do. But in a lot of contexts, what we can have is that families will have questions as to, well, how is this going to impact my child later on in life? And so the purpose of this video is to help you understand why developmental milestones are important and why, depending on the severity of your child's HIE diagnosis, you may be able to see some things early on, or it may impact a child later in life. Now, before I talk about the developmental milestones and why that is so important, I want to help you understand if your child has just been diagnosed with HIE, what is HIE and how do we see it from a medical legal standpoint? All right, okay, so HIE is hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. And what that means is that in general, your baby has had a reduced level of blood and oxygen, and that reduced level of blood and oxygen is what has led to a brain injury. So that is HIE in that context. And how we see it a lot of times is that what will happen is that during a vaginal delivery, the baby may be in fetal distress, and doctors may fail to properly diagnose that fetal distress. And because they fail to properly diagnose it, they don't treat it correctly. And because they don't treat it correctly, the baby can then go on in some cases and suffer a brain injury. Now, doctors and nurses, they can do conservative methods and conservative treatments for a baby that's in fetal distress. But if those methods and if those treatments are not working, then the doctors have to be ready to move to what we call an emergency C-section. So that is HIE in a nutshell. Now, the developmental milestones part, the reason why this part is really important is because developmental milestones are what is used to gauge the development of a child. Now, you got to understand that not every baby and not every child is going to develop the same way at the exact same time. So the developmental milestones they're just pretty much guideposts as to how a level that a child should meet based on a certain age, okay? So you've got to really understand it that way. No two children are going to develop perfectly the same way at each time. But these developmental milestones, what they do is they do kind of give you some guideposts as to when a baby is going to be crawling, or when a baby is going to be using, grips, when a baby is going to start making mama, dada, and certain sounds. And as that child gets older, we're talking about 1 year old, then there's going to be certain things that baby is going to meet there. When the baby gets 2, there's going to be certain milestones that the baby may meet there. When the baby gets 3, all the way up to 5. And so these developmental milestones, they are really important because they allow parents to be able to kind of get a gauge as to how their child is developing. Now, in the context of HIE, to bring this all full circle, because HIE affects the brain, what can happen is that there can be delays with some children in meeting these milestones. And so that is what parents have to be on the lookout for. It's really important to pay close attention to your child's development if they have an HIE diagnosis. Because early on, especially if there is a mild or a mild form of a brain injury, if you have something like that, then early on, you may not be able to see the impact of that diagnosis. But as that child gets 3 years old, as the child gets 4 years old, as the child gets 5 years old, hitting these milestones, you may be able to see certain types of delays. So as parents, you've just got to make sure that you pay close attention as to your child's development. And you can go online for developmental milestones. There's a lot of sites and there's a lot of information online that deals with developmental milestones and how a child develops as they get older. If you've got questions about specifics on that developmental side, be sure to talk with your child's doctor about those types of issues. So why did I take the time today to talk with you about this really, really important information? Because if you're watching today, more than likely your baby has an HIE diagnosis and you are concerned about the challenges that your child's going to face going into the future. You may be at that point now where you may be noticing some delays as it pertains to the developmental milestones and things of that nature, and you may have questions as to how your child is going to meet those challenges. And you also may be wondering, well, does my child have this brain injury because of something that the doctors or the nurses that they may have failed to do? Remember, I talked earlier about that HIE, fetal distress, failure to diagnose the fetal distress, which leads to failure to treat the fetal distress, which then, allows the baby in some instances to suffer a brain injury. So if you've got this going on and you would like to speak with me further, this is what I invite you to do. While I've been talking, there's a phone number on the screen. Go ahead and pick up the phone and talk with me. We can talk about this. This is what we do. I speak with families and parents about HIE diagnoses, cerebral palsy or CP diagnosis, MAS diagnosis, brachial plexus injuries, a whole host of injuries and challenges that babies can have due to birth trauma. That is what we do. Now, before I leave, I want to also make sure that you remember that if you give me a call and you are not in Maryland, because I practice law in the state of Maryland, if you call me and you're not in Maryland, you got to understand that if this is something that we think that we can help you or assist you with, we have to use local counsel. In other words, an attorney in your state to assist or to move the case forward, okay? So I just want to make sure that you understand that local counsel piece as I try to talk over a very loud car that is passing by. All right, that's going to be it for today's quick educational video. Again, I'm Marcus Boston, and I'm one of the childbirth injury and medical malpractice attorneys practicing law in the state of Maryland at Boston Law Group LLC. And we will see you next time. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.